Hello again and welcome back to our second hour from Collins Bay. We're ready now to move to our next report. It's about guards, more formally called correctional officers. There are about 5,500 of them in the system doing work that is often thankless and dangerous. Diana Swain went to get to know the guards at Stoney Mountain Penitentiary near Winnipeg, a medium security institution that first opened in 1876.
I'm not saying I'm Mr. Perfect correctional officer. I can be an asshole.
There's guards that come here for their paychecks. There's guards that come here because they really do want to make a difference. And there's guards that come here to fuck with you.
I'll treat you the way you treat me. You've got to remember that. We tell them when to eat. We tell them when to go to bed. We tell them when to lock up. We tell them where to go. And that's not something that's easy for them. They are afraid. And if they aren't telling you that, they're lying.
Love you.
Bye.
Bye.
He begins his workday like anyone else.
It takes about 40 minutes for me to get from my home to this institution. You've got 40 minutes to think, to prepare yourself.
Gilles Guillasson is a correctional officer at the medium security prison called Stoney Mountain.
And then you see the institution sitting there. You're wondering, okay, is this going to be my last day? Am I going to walk into something that is totally innocent and turns ugly? We found a shiv. What else did we find?
Hacksaw blade.
Hacksaw blade.
Break it off, attach it onto a stick. You want to get it.
You think about those things.
What greets Guillasson today is a full lockdown.
Tell them open 14!
Officers are searching every inmate, every cell. Some billiard balls have gone missing from the rec hall. A knife has been smuggled out of the kitchen, hidden somewhere by the inmates. Officers believe rival gangs are preparing for battle. Every crack in this aging institution is being checked.
Sometimes what they do is they'll, there's a hole, they'll fill it up with toothpaste, paint over it, and you would never know it was even there. So that's why you gotta check every nook and cranny just to make sure there's nothing, no little secret compartments.
The officers know anything they miss could just as easily be used against them.
And it was located up in the light fixture. They just slide it up underneath the light, and if they need it, they've got coat hangers and you just scoop it out quickly in a hurry. That's why these searches have to take place. Someone's gonna get hurt one day.
Lockdowns like this don't happen very often. The last one here was a year ago. But sometimes when you change the strict routine of this place, it can actually serve to heighten tensions. That's something the correctional officers have to be keenly aware of, because they're outnumbered by the inmates 10 to 1.
In just a few hours, officers have collected a stash of homemade weapons. Metal, wood, and glass fashioned into shivs or shanks.
Sometimes you're surprised what you find. They're ingenious on what they come up with.
They're makeshift, but close at hand. The officers don't carry weapons. They don't want them stripped away by the inmates. The guards' arsenal is locked in the armory, broken out only for the most extreme confrontations.
My weapon is my wits, my brain, and how I go about it in different situations.
Just the day before our interview, Guillasson was threatened by an inmate hiding a sharpened toothbrush in his hand.
How did you react?
I just took it away from him real quickly, and then I put him up against the wall and called for some handcuffs, and we cuffed him up. And you got to react. You've got to know what you're doing.
It was overwhelming at first, and my mom was devastated that I was gonna, get killed, and horrible things were gonna happen to me, and I'm a woman.
Kelly Boyle is a newcomer, just a year on the job.
Sometimes I go home very frustrated because it's not always easy to deal with every offender, and it's not always successful. Sometimes they'll get you to the point where you're just ready to blow, and it's hard to separate yourself from that at times. Other times it's very rewarding.
But a lot of it's just standing around watching things.
And this man has stood guard over a lot of inmates. John Shaw has been a correctional officer for 28 years. a milestone unsurpassed at this prison.
I think of myself as probably the toughest screws that ever walked the floors of Stoney Mountain.
This career correctional officer is convinced the public has no idea what he really does.
They watch a lot of American movies and they think we run around armed to the teeth with the sunglasses on, you know, that you only see one way, and we occasionally beat them up for something to do, but the general public, I think, has very little idea of what actually goes on inside.
Day 2 of the lockdown.
On the day shift, the lockdown and the searching continues.
Guards get updated at their morning briefing. The inmates remain locked in their cells, their normal prison freedoms suspended.
It can be stressful because a lot of tempers get flared, you know, so a lot of guys get angry.
They don't like it. The bottom line is they don't like it. And sometimes you don't. It'd be like police coming into your house and tearing everything apart and saying, okay, put everything back and just move on.
Fucking stepping over my bed, those fucking pigs. I could go fucking step on their bed, fuck.
You know, they're just showing off, you know. But, yeah, it seems like that. I mean, it's just their way of expressing their love for us, I think.
Shaw's heard it all before. And since he started, he's seen a big change in the relationship between guards and inmates.
If there was any problems with inmates and inmate and the staff went at it, well, they just sort of duked it out, and in the morning, the inmates would have a black eye and the staff would have a black eye, and that was the end of that.
And I wake up, my knife is gone.
Correctional officers will tell you their job has evolved. No longer simply the key holders, officers now play an active role in rehabilitation through counseling and one-on-one casework.
Holy, that is really good. They should all be given a chance. Everyone should be given a chance.
But prison life has evolved too, with new threats.
Wires, hooked onto a needle. Tattooing.
This tattoo needle may seem harmless, but it can transmit potentially fatal diseases from one inmate to another, or to an unsuspecting guard.
I felt something jab me. I looked down, I saw a little bit of blood, and I opened up the bag, and I saw a needle.
4 years ago, Guillaume's hand was punctured by a needle seized from an inmate's cell. It sent him on a year-long odyssey of prescription drugs, tests, and a gnawing fear he would contract HIV.
First month was hell. Thinking, am I going to infect my wife? Am I going to infect my kids?
The tests have always come back negative. And yet what was a terrifying experience is what Guillaume says motivates him to stay.
What was another fellow officer gets stabbed with a needle, and he goes through the same thing that I went through? Who's going to be there for him? Who's going to be able to help him out? If I'm able to give that back to somebody, then yeah, it's worth being here.
Being there can also mean protecting your fellow officer. Because when violence erupts here, it can be deadly. July 1984. Some inmates seized control, killing 2 guards by stabbing them with a pair of scissors during a botched hostage-taking. That night, John Shaw found himself with a shotgun in his hands, watching the life drain from a fellow officer.
A trail of blood across the floor, about 4.5 feet wide and about 1/4 inch thick.
Fire!
History has proved the need for the shooting range. Every officer practices the skill of deadly force and hopes they'll never have to use it.
Pray that we don't have to go through it. Understanding that what comes after it is pretty traumatic, so I wouldn't want to go through it.
You've been threatened. You've been stuck with a needle. You've had to be tested for HIV. That's a pretty high price to pay for a job.
Not really. There is that underlying fear that something could happen. You've got to be able to put that behind you. If you don't put that behind you, I don't know how long you'll last.
It's a well-known fact that the inmates only let us run it as long as they want us to, which is true. They can take it any time if they were organised, but they can't get out. They can't get over the walls.
Okay. So anything good happened at work today?
Still in lockdown. Sometimes I'll admit to you, I do take it home. I mean, something, I can't just leave that behind. I mean, if an incident happened here and I have to talk to somebody, who better to listen to me than my wife?
I always have people asking me the same question, like, aren't you afraid? And I say yes, but I mean, you deal with it, you learn to deal with it.
You take the good and you take the bad and you put it all together and you prepare yourself. That's what you do.